used to sing that when we were growing up, and everybody else in the house would say, "Be quiet," you know, she'd be out there singing, and it kind of goes with what I was going to talk about, because I grew up in this big, crazy house. That was, there were 7 of us, big house, and it was always chaotic, you know, and somebody was always fighting, and there was always stuff happening in the house. And next door, we had 2, you know, everybody knew their neighbors. At least when I grew up, we all knew our neighbors, and we had a set of neighbors, Mrs. Royal and Mr. Royal, that lived on one side, and Mr. and Mrs. Johnson that lived on the other side. Okay, the Royals were like so nice and so generous and giving, and they used to, you know, our house was always chaotic, and they'd see me outside sometimes crying or something, and, you know, she would call me in and, you know, give me tea, and we would talk, and one of the most, like, I'm talking about this because an example of spiritual maturity that I saw as a little girl, and she was like an old lady, and now I look back and she was probably my age, you know, at the time. But you know how you see somebody when you're young and you think they're really old, and she was like really old, but I think she was like in her 60s or something. And anyway, I learned to really love her. And then on the other side was the Johnsons, and Mrs. Johnson was this meanie old crab. And, you know, they both, you know, had lived there the same amount of time. I think I was there from being born until I left when I was in my 20s. And I never really did get to know her really well. I knew that every time we'd play ball outside or something, we'd go into her flowers and she would yell and, you know, come over to the house and tell Mom and Dad about it. And we were too loud. There was always something with her. And I saw her as this kind of sad figure. And as I look back now, I see Mrs. Royal as being kind of a light person. Does that make sense? I'm trying to look at the difference. And I see Mrs. Johnson as being heavy, you know, and like, almost like she was sinking, and Mrs. Royal was floating. There was such a difference, you know, between them. And I know that they both went through a lot in life. As I look back, I can remember different incidences about having children that died. There was a lot of stuff they had gone through. And, you know, but it makes you kind of wonder when you see people, you know, what's the difference? They're about the same age, and, you know, one is cheery no matter what. She seems to, you know, be, you know, stable, and the other one didn't. And I got to thinking, you know, we all have to navigate these choppy waters of life, don't we? I mean, it's like, you know, that's just what life is. There's these ups and these downs, these scary things that happen, the diagnoses, you know, with people, the relationships, and, you know, there's financial problems, there's all this stuff. Why is it that some people can even out and get through this, you know, and then some people just are sinking? And I think it's a matter to do with spiritual maturity. See, I think life, you know, can either make us better or bitter. And for some people, it's bitter. You know, they become bitter people. And some people just get better when stuff happens to them. And I was reading a book. I'm reading the book on aging as a spiritual practice, and he's kind of talking about this in life, and it's kind of interesting. He says, his name's Louis Richmond, and he talks that we all go through changes in life, right? And he says there's 4 ways, the stages that we handle changes or devastations. And boy, I can name these in my life, and I want you to kind of, as I go through them, look at your life and see when these happen to you, because, you know, there's more than one time. You know, you might be going through stuff right now, or going through 10 things right now. The first one, he says, is lightning strikes. That's our oh my God moment. That's the moment when you're like, I can't believe this happened. I just got this diagnosis. You know, or it can be something simple like, I remember not long ago, I was like combing my hair, and I looked at my arm was hanging down, and I went, oh my God, I'm old. You know, I mean, things like that. You'd think that's funny, but it isn't for some people. It's like, whoa, you know, it's like, I'm really getting old, and you start to think, you know. I mean, honestly, when you start to see the wrinkles, there's things that change. You lose your job, you know, forever. You've had this job, and all of a sudden, I happened to my husband, devastated, because, you know, that's who he was. So that's the oh my God moment. And we have so many of them in our life. And that is called when lightning strikes. Okay, then the next stage is coming to terms. See, that's then when we we're coming to terms with what happened. And we do that by comparing ourselves to the way it used to be. Man, I used to to be kind of pretty. What happened? I used to be, have a job. I used to be this. You start to compare yourself to the way it used to be until finally, you can look at yourself and you say, you know what? The old part of me is done and there's a new part that is coming, there's a new part. So you kind of start to coming to terms when everything falls apart in your life, and then finally you kind of starting to accept it and you look forward to this new thing that's going to happen. You lose your job and you're saying, wow, maybe there was a reason, and then you find that maybe there's something way better that this cosmic universe had planned for us. Maybe this is a platform for something bigger. And then he says the next stage is adaptation. It's leveling out, and then you're resting in the new situation. You become better. After a spouse dies, then all of a sudden, you start to look at yourself and you become different, than you were before, and you take all of it together. You lose your job, you get a different job. Then you, even with aging, is what his book is about, aging. So he's talking about, you come to the moment when you realize, you aren't that 25-year-old, and it's okay, and it's even better. And see, the next stage then is appreciation. You look back at all the things that were, and it turns into finally a full acceptance of what is. See, and that's spiritual maturity. It's turning into a full acceptance and finding the gift in what happened, right? Finding the gifts in your life. You might not like it, but there's always reasons, and there's gifts that happen no matter what happens in your life. See, and to me, that's spiritual maturity. It's being okay. The biggest thing, as I look at my life, and I have talked to many of you, is being okay with being in the question. Being okay with this mystery of not knowing what's going to happen in my life. Because nobody knows what happens. We all try to control our life. We all try to figure out what's going to happen and make it work, but we don't know. And so being okay with being in this in-between place is okay, and that's spiritual maturity. When I was in ministerial school with Judy, we talked about, each of us had a credo, and something we wanted to live by, and we had to write it and put it down, and mine was, I want to surrender to the mystery of life. I want to just be okay with not always knowing what's going to happen in my life. And boy, I never know what's happening in my life, ever. And I'm only beginning to be okay with that. And not every day. Sometimes it doesn't happen. But I know that I'm in process. And it becomes a little bit easier to be okay with not knowing what's going to happen next in my life. But what I've learned is that I can live in that question. I can live in this place of not knowing and be present with my life, and whatever shows up is joyous. Wait, that's not even true. Not everything that shows up is not joyous. But I can be okay with it, knowing that those moments will come too. That life is all of it. It's like Ron Doss talks about, he's got these great books out on living in the mystery and stuff. And he talks about being able to, have a bigger container, than just our own little body, that knowing we are more than that, and that suffering, he says, it sucks. He says suffering sucks, that's his words. Mine too, because I'm not much of I don't like suffering either. But suffering is good too, and it's on some plane somewhere, that suffering is okay too. And if we can hold them both, if we can have that idea that it's okay, we will get through it. And we do that by expanding who we are, by not focusing just on this little human self. We have to know that we are so much bigger, that we are the spirit, not the flesh. We are the flesh right now, but we are mainly the spirit that moves through us. We have this power and this grace that moves through us, that can actually not control our life, but lead our life, if we let go. See, I think that's navigating the waters of life when stuff happens, and you can just lay back. I love this. Oh, wrong one. You didn't get my thing, did you? Anyway, I had a polar bear, I thought was up there, that was floating, okay? And that's what I'm thinking, is that just, that's how I see us, as we get a little more spiritually mature, is that we're able to just go, float back with life, just say, okay, and not with every situation. I'm saying that, we go through different cycles. Like I can be floating on my idea that, I lost my job, but then another whammy hits me and I'm back at, oh my God. So, these are the things that we go through, these cycles. And maturity is just knowing that happens in life. It's not being so stuck. You know, I know people, you know, in my family, none of you, that are, you know, stuck on the oh my God, they never got out of it, right? And it's been 30 years, okay? Oh my God, for 30 years, you know, you know, my dad hurt my mom 30 years, and 30 years later, oh my God, I can't still get over it. And that's what stunts our growth. That's what stops us from living this meaningful life, because spiritual maturity is about meaning. See, it's about, I'm working on this workshop now. I'm so excited, by the way. It's the Evolve workshop that will be starting on March 6th. And it's got six Sundays. And we'll be talking about how we take our life, you know, and how do we move forward? How do we find what's inside of our life that we have to be joyous for, and the things that we're having hurdles getting over? And how do we get meaning to that, you know? How do we make our life alive with meaning, no matter how old we are, no matter how young we are? Because it's all the same. You know, how do we find meaning and joy and gratitude and generosity? And you know what the answer is? I'm going to tell you, even though I'd like you to come to the workshop. It's having a sense of belonging. It's being connected to people who care. It's you know, I'd love to get here someday, Judy and I need to talk about it, but I love circles of belonging, because I know people that have those circles of belonging. I'm looking at Alice and Sharon, those three right there. They have a church lady group that's a part of a circle of belonging. And we need those things because they help us live longer, and they really do. And I'm going to show a video that talks about how we live longer. We live better. We live better when we have friends that care. And that's what community is about, you guys. More than anything, you know, more than learning about anything, it's about learning about each other and loving each other enough to be there for each other. And that's what spiritual maturity is. We can't do this alone. We can't evolve alone. When I talk about evolving, that's the workshop. You know, we can't be spiritually mature alone. We need each other to rub up against, to irritate. See, when I don't fight with Judy, but if I did, I would learn from that, right? And I would grow, you know, so the people, I'll use my family because I argue with them, right? And I argue with them, and I learn from that. You know, I don't go and blame them. I go, wow, okay, what do I have to learn? We need people that rub us the wrong way. It shows us who we are. So, spiritual maturity, you know what it's about? It's just about living this incredible life of accepting everything. Doesn't mean your life's going to be, things aren't going to happen in your life. What it means is that you're just going to be able to live with them. And you're going to find meaning. You're going to find love in them. You're going to find wisdom. That's what spiritual maturity is about. It's about a journey into our wholeness. It's a journey of learning who you really are. That you are an incredible spirit. That's who you are. You're an incredible spirit that is just busting out of your body, right? That's who you are. It's about finding meaning with what is. It's a process of knowing that we are much, much more than we ever thought we should be. My prayer for each